This is about to be the biggest, baddest episode you've seen thus far of Unfiltered. He's Isaac.
He's Philip.
We've got the Crevier brothers. We've got an Isaiah and a Caleb. The biblical nature of what's about to happen at this, the namesakes, it's just exciting.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be here.
For sure. It's good.
I've heard a lot about you guys from Dr. Phil here, so I'm excited to get to know you both.
Yes,
talk
because
a little bit, but
y'all are my wife's cousins, but it's like it didn't take long for y'all to be like my best friends. And so, we all stood in each other's weddings, and we've had some good.
That's surprising when you look back at history of our weddings.
And where we've been.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Well, like I've had you.
Mm-hmm.
Caleb was there as well. Caleb had you and me as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you had us both as well.
Yeah. We all were in.
All have been
Yeah.
in
So
each other's-
Isaac,
and I'm just
your wedding is
along
coming
for the
up.
ride.
Yeah.
Do you need a couple extra?
Yeah, you guys want to come down in 3 weeks?
Unfortunately, it's we have a lot of family members. That's very fortunate. But unfortunately, what I mean by that is
We're
there's
in
a
more
lot of
than
weddings.
we ever want
I
to be.
bet.
Yes, and so there's a lot of like purchases and showing
I know.
up on time and
It's expensive to go to weddings.
it's expensive to be in weddings.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so it's a blessing to do it. It's just fun as our little brothers are getting older and older and older. We're realizing how many more weddings we actually have to go through. It's a lot.
To the point where we discuss, do we just say like a moratorium, no more weddings? Like we're not going to be in any more weddings?
You hope not. It's a responsibility. It's an
Yeah.
obligation, but it's a good obligation to support them.
Absolutely.
So Philip, thanks
We're
for
two
having
of
us on your
12.
wedding.
So I'm
of
the second
12.
oldest. He's the third oldest.
Of all brothers, or how many brothers
They're
are
all
there?
girls except for 8 boys.
Oh, okay. Except for 8? Yeah, okay. Just a few.
A few.
You stole that joke from my dad years ago.
Yep.
That's a good one.
Never gets old.
Do you guys have massive like wedding parties then, like your groomsmen and bridesmaids?
No, we typically just hang out, guys and girls together.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really split off. I know for Isaiah's that we did down in Charles City, we just went skeet shooting. That was fun.
Yeah.
With everybody.
Caleb purchased a ton of ammo and a ton of skeets. I call them clay pigeons, and we blew a lot of money that day.
Yeah, it was a $1,500 bill for the bachelor party.
Yeah.
It was fun though.
Yeah, we had a lot of clay pigeons in my father-in-law's backyard. That was good.
That was one of my first shooting experiences,
Really?
like ever. Like legit. We've got guns. We've got ammo. We've got space. We've got it all. And
We've got lamb.
Yeah.
I got lamb.
You did, because that's what we had. Yeah.
Lamb.
It was like, yeah.
And
Was it
later,
steaks?
yep. Lamb steaks.
Lamb steaks.
Yeah.
Did it right.
We did it right. Yeah. You'd have been happy
Oh, it sounds like I would have
Yeah.
loved it.
for sure.
How did you walk away from that day, your first major shooting experience?
Remember being like, okay, like this is one of the more manliest things that I've done, just to like wield the power and do it well. And like, there goes the clay, and then dinner. Like that, it could have been like that, So it wet my whistle, and then I walked away from it because I wasn't really ready. I wasn't married at the time. I didn't have the house or the money to start investing. But now that some of those dominoes are in, now
I think it was still years after that before you got a gun, correct?
years, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, my first gun purchase was just this last fall.
Newbie.
Newbie, right.
But
And then,
if I can say this too, though, a lot of times when you're a kid and you don't have the money to blow your own ammo, so a lot of times you rely on somebody else. So
Yes.
the fact that that was probably the most I had even shot, because we had gone through, and when you have a lot of brothers, you have to share. And Dad would share his 16 gauge, and
It's like, one shot for you. Oh, shoot. Everybody, we're out of a box. Everybody
Exactly.
got one shot.
exactly. So I think that was probably the most I had shot, because I think it was 24 at the time. Yeah, that was the most I had shot as well, and I
Yeah.
enjoyed it probably just as much as you did.
it's legit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
Way to bring them in, man.
So if you're looking
Yeah.
for bachelor party ideas,
Oh, I think he's got a lot of ideas. I'm totally in the dark, but next week.
Next week.
Yeah.
Who is it?
Yeah. We're like
Nice.
taking Thursday and Friday off.
Yeah.
And then doing it
Good for you
big.
guys.
And he's completely in the dark. He knows nothing.
I don't know anything.
I'm so excited.
All right, plug your ears. Go ahead. No.
right. Yeah.
Will you go upstairs for a second?
Yeah, sure. Fill you in later.
Yeah.
One question.
Yeah.
Is a bazooka involved?
I cannot tell you that.
You cannot tell
I cannot
it.
confirm or deny.
If you've seen The Office and the
Limousine.
limousine and
Correct.
the bazooka,
That's right.
That's a pretty epic.
The bestest mensch. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a fan.
Don't give me false hope, man.
No, too far fetched. They don't let civilians. I don't think they could actually get that.
There's the wet blanket.
Yes, sorry about that, buddy. I set your expectations way up
Man.
here, and it's gonna be like,
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
who knows what we'll get into?
Yeah, we'll see.
There's some wiggle room in the schedule.
We'll
It's
have to
not all
follow up
planned
on
out.
that on a future podcast.
Done.
What happened?
Yeah,
yes.
So stay tuned,
We'll
unfiltered.
take, that's right.
See what happens.
Well, the best way to introduce you guys is Lindsay. There is a YouTube video pulled up on Safari, which is the one thing I think best represents a little bit about who you are and the family, where you come from, and then some of the things that you've done. Because your life is, I would say, your life has been unique compared to the standard American Midwestern life.
Yeah, definitely different.
Y'all are from South Dakota, Brookings.
Absolutely. Love it.
You're a doctor of chiropractic. That's where we met. It's in chiropractic school.
Yep.
Yep. I mean, you're a jack of all trades. I mean,
I like to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
gonna-
just don't follow that up with master of none, because he's
Yeah.
actually a master of many trades.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's incredibly difficult to find something you're bad at. I was like tallying things. It's like, well, he's good at that too, and it's like, well, I'm good at this, but
Right.
he's better. And then it's just that's kind of my. It's almost we've been tight. We've been very good friends.
Yes.
But then when you're like showing me yesterday, we're doing gun drills. You've got me doing like burpees and sprints, shooting rounds, and it's like, okay, now I just became Caleb's little brother, which you are 2 years older than me, but it's like you have things to teach me. It's because you've done so much and you've become so good at so much so fast. It's truly amazing, and yeah.
I told you missed out.
I did, apparently.
Correct. And I mean, it's the same. That was our relationship. Like, you brought me along. You were really the one that like opened my eyes to health, because we went to chiropractic school.
That's right.
Which you would think would be about health, but it's not. I mean,
Right.
they teach you a few things, but then what you need to know about health is massive. But your family and your traditions and the way you guys did things was so deep already. And you like adopted me again, almost like a little brother, but then you elevated me to a peer. And I'm thankful for that, because
While we're on the topic of adoption, we have kombucha here, and you
Oh,
have
yeah.
never
Right
ever
now.
tried it. So
Right.
He's
open
throwing you
up,
under the bus.
open up.
I had a pretty good run
brand
up
new
until
bottle
now.
of
Here we go.
kombucha,
Brand new.
and
I'm told this is the best of the kombucha
it's
you
very
can
good.
have. Okay.
So see how well you like it.
Anything I need to know before we go in here?
Just hey, go cold turkey. See how you like it.
there it is.
Not bad.
The aftertaste hit you.
Well, he said
That's-
okay. He didn't say anything else.
It's fine.
Pleasantly surprised, like you could
You
enjoy
know-
it.
It's not as bad as I was expecting.
Okay, so take another drink.
Because
Okay.
we love kombucha.
Oh,
You
yeah.
do?
Yeah, oh yeah.
There's just a lot of weird flavors going on all at once.
It's very different, and that's why a lot of people don't like it. Yeah,
Are you sensing some vinegar?
Actually, not as much as I expected.
it smells
From
worse.
smelling it, it smelled like really
And that would have
vinegary.
been my one advice: don't smell it before you drink it. That's
Yeah.
the mistake everyone makes. Is they smell it and they think, "Oh no, can't do it." Yeah.
There's almost like a weird kind of spice flavor going on
Yeah.
to me that I wasn't
So
expecting.
now you've been adopted into the health
Wow.
family. As we continue this conversation,
Thank you, everybody. I feel honored to be here.
Yeah, we love kombucha, good probiotics.
Just put the lid on.
He's done. He's done with it. This one's
Maybe I'll
got
come back.
orange, vanilla, and theanine. Theanine is a good like level offer. You know, it's a calmer.
which you need right now. I noticed you were being a little hyper.
Okay. It's just how I do it, you know.
A lot of benefits
I can
to
taste it. Vanilla,
kombucha.
orange.
But when you talk about that carbonation and the people who feel like they need that because they're drinking pop, kombucha is like a good kind of segue
It's
if you
fizzy
can
like
acquire
pop.
the right. So you can get that, but then get benefits instead of just drinking that toxicity that is in pop. If you don't know it, you got to know it now. Pop's bad for you every day of the week and
Absolutely.
twice on Sunday. Don't do it.
And even just with some kombuchas too, a lot of the some brands do have. If we're talking about sugars,
Yeah.
a lot of the brands to make it more appealing would be adding in a little bit more sugar at the end.
Right.
Which, if it's not fermented, then you do have a little bit of an issue. So sometimes you are drinking sugar with some of the, with some specific brands.
But
So
this
it's-
one is a great brand.
Yeah.
They do a good job.
It's
and
important to have more
Yeah.
of the vinegar. Is my point.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really not that bad. I mean, I can deal.
we definitely downplayed it to hopefully make it so you'd enjoy it a little more, for sure.
Oh, this is tampered with? Is that what you're saying?
No. We just.
What'd you do?
I think we set the bar pretty low
Oh, sure.
as far as like tasting like vinegar.
That's a
Yeah.
tame one. Yeah.
Yeah.
We could get a
Oh.
lot worse.
Oh,
Could get a lot worse.
thank you for
Oh, come on.
keeping
It
it
only goes
tame.
up from there.
When you make it yourself, you can figure out 15 or 16 different ways to not make it.
And yeah,
Very
I'm glad I
strong.
don't have to go through that
Yes.
process.
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It's funny because I could see you getting into making kombucha.
Oh yeah,
100%.
really?
Yeah.
Okay, you've already got the chickens, so I can.
What part of the chicken goes into kombucha?
Well, you're already kind of doing your own thing.
Natural
Oh,
farm
okay.
Natural
lifestyle.
farm,
Yeah.
yeah.
That
Yeah,
actually
exactly.
does lead me into a funny story. I was actually shadowing a doc in a part of South Dakota, and one of the docs that we were with kept. He was like drinking it looked like a little mug, and I kept smelling like this weird smell that was coming off. And by the end of it, I was just like, "Hey, what are you drinking?" And he was like, "Oh, it's kombucha." Well, I'll tell you what I thought at that moment, but fast forward, he was like, "Oh yeah, this client of ours, he actually gives us like 2 gallons a week, and they just drink it throughout the week. He's a good probiotic. He makes it himself." And so he ended up giving me 2 half-gallon jugs. And, we were big fans of kombucha at the time. And so, funny story is, I bring it back to the family, and then I obviously we have a lot of kids, and so the family ends up drinking most of it. Well, lo and behold, this guy.
We went to play basketball actually in our local town, and it was super hot out in the gym. It was super hot in the gym, and so we're playing ball, and I'm just like chugging this stuff, and all of a sudden I'm noticing like my shot's like.
And he's also behaving a little bit like.
I was laughing a little hard. If you overdo it, it can turn a little alcoholic.
Oh, really?
If it
A
It's
little
overbrewed.
alcoholic.
Really?
This specific brew, I think it had sat in the fridge a little bit, and so that sugar that was on top had actually fermented more. So the stuff that they gave us was actually still in the process of fermentation, and so Caleb unknowingly had gotten a little bit tipsy on it. And then I was looking back at why I was questioning what I was smelling, and I think I had just picked up a little bit of an alcoholic smell on that specific batch, and so it can turn alcoholic, which is
Really?
why it is an art. Just like beer making or wine making, you can make it super vinegary, super sweet, super alcoholic. That's why it really is an art form.
There's no alcohol in that, so
Yeah.
don't be worried. But
Okay, good to know.
But a fermentation process can lead into alcohol. So that was a super funny story about don't screw it up.
I guess. Wow.
And you guys are already establishing just yourselves as like some go-to guys for wisdom and information. You should roll that video, because this is a video, and just that picture-in-picture, you can blow it up at some point here later, because 12 siblings,
Yep.
South Dakota, and this is a video of you guys on America's Got Talent.
Yes.
back in
2000
2013.
Yes.
Can Caleb give just a little bit of background?
Yeah,
on that
100%.
too?
Yep,
Well, just roll it, and we can talk over it if we need
for
to.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Sure, go for it. Yeah, and then Caleb, we'll just add your voice. Absolutely. This is why I love this setup, and Lindsay does so good at orchestrating these things. So, yeah, Caleb, tell us about it.
Well, we went to
There's mom and dad right
yes,
there.
Yep, mom and dad, and that's our family in the background. That's actually in Elkton, South Dakota. That's our bus there, and there's all the kids at that time. They're definitely a lot older now, but this was quite a fun time that we had. And that is pretending to be farmers. Our family had some sheep down the road, so they want to do some fun filming stuff. So, yeah, that was the first time that we were on, and we actually went through 3 different cycles of the event. But this is actually leading up to the finals at Radio City Music Hall in New York City. So this is just a little preview video.
You guys were top 30, correct, of that season?
Top 50.
Top 50.
Top 50.
Yes.
Yep.
Which, if you can hear, you guys came. Caleb, you have kids. Isaiah, you have kids. We've got dogs running around. So if you can, as viewers, if you're hearing babies crying and dogs barking, it's because we've got a full house, and this is how we do it. This is how we do it. So
Part of the
Absolutely.
babysitters are
right here, right?
so I'm feeling terrible right now.
As you can see here, this is at Radio City Music Hall in New York City, and with the crew there was so excited because we were the first big event to actually take up the entire stage. Because as you can see, we're using the entire stage there, and that was, Isaiah, wouldn't you say that was a pretty amazing experience?
Yeah. Probably the most different experience when we traveled and performed. Most
Sure.
different of everything we had done, just because we weren't the ones putting on the show.
That's right.
It was somebody else was orchestrating.
You were being
every
showcased.
aspect. Yes.
And you
that
guys
was very
are
challenging. Yeah.
10-foot tall unicycles.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
And you
all the
all-
way down to my younger brother there. He's actually on a 5-footer right there, but you can see it kind of goes down. But
How old was he at that time?
he is 7.
7. So it's, I mean, the amount of people that can ride a unicycle in the world has got to be like, half.
99.9% of the world cannot.
Right, exactly. But yet here you have a 7-year-old riding a unicycle. Why, I think, is the question.
Because Dad said, get on that,
Right
learn
on.
how to ride.
So that's Isaiah and I there in the center, right there.
Obviously some amazed judges there. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, that was quite an experience, and we practiced for an entire month for that 90 seconds.
right on.
Like
Wow.
each part of the music, like we never really choreographed to music, but like now here we are. Like when music is playing up, you got to be at this point because you're given 90 seconds and you're going live no matter what. When we call it, it was quite an experience because that was actually a live event right there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was our family kind of in a nutshell.
But the reason why everyone can ride is when you have a bunch of siblings. There's just this healthy competition that comes up. So like Jake, when Jake first learned how to ride, then it was like Caleb's duty or responsibility to like go and ride next, and then Jake could go backwards by the time Caleb could ride, and then by the time Caleb could go backwards.
Well, I wouldn't say it was quite. It was more like all three of us started practicing at the same time, but because he was older,
yeah.
And boom.
But I would say that because somebody learned faster than you in something made you naturally want to be better, or because it would be hard to get someone to do all those tricks with that intrinsic motivation that a family can actually bring. So healthy competition back and forth. Who's the
Yeah.
best shooter? Who can build the best tiny house? Definitely me. I mean, come on. Are you kidding me? Have you seen my house?
oh man,
Please.
We almost should find a picture of your tiny house too, just to show
Oh,
your
boy.
craftsmanship. But hey,
This
I don't
guy.
know. It's probably on Facebook. If Lindsay has a moment, you'll get there. But you should put up those photos of their families too. Just now that we're in that zone. But then you guys have traveled around as a family, like doing these shows for like Upward Bound programs, school seminars, things like that. Like,
oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we've been traveling full time. Our dad quit his job when I was just a few months old. At the time, he worked at a gym. He quit that full time and went. And so ever since we were little, we started out in a Honda Civic. So we drove around in a Honda Civic for a while. Then we got another Honda Civic. Then we went through 3 minivans. Then we went to a big 15-passenger van. We went through about 3 of those. Then we went through 2 Class A motorhomes. Then 2 Class C motorhomes, which were the motorhome that had the van front and the mattress over the top of the van. And then we went to a Class A, and then finally a bus, and now they're on their second bus at the moment.
crazy.
Wow.
So
Is that one up?
millions of miles.
Here's your family, Caleb. You,
Yes,
wife,
that's my
Destiny.
wife, Destiny, and that's our adopted daughter, Aria. We adopted her June 10th of 2019.
Right on.
And actually just this year, we adopted her little baby brother. We got a call from her birth mom and said, hey, I'm pregnant again. Would you guys want to adopt? And
Super
what
excited.
a joy, what a pleasure to have the opportunity to adopt her sibling. So, now as she goes through life, there's someone who knows what she's going through. And yeah, because they're the only adopted kids in our entire large family at the moment. I'm sure at some point more will come along, but
Sure.
yeah, she's an absolute joy, treasure, and Destiny and I, my wife and I, we love her very much.
Right
And
on.
our new little brother. Yeah.
Which, just a mini tangent here, but like the adoption process is not an easy thing
No,
to do.
no,
A lot of
absolutely
steps,
not.
a lot of legal things.
People are like, oh, yeah, just get a baby for free. I mean, I wish it was that easy, but everything from background checks to,
Yeah.
you got to get letters of support from, other couples who will sign off and say, you're going to be good parents. And yeah, just different, home studies and a lot of different things that have to come together before you can actually go through the process. So
And there's money involved. Like,
yeah.
you've got to pay.
Yeah, I'd say the average adoption in the U.S. is probably about $30,000 to $40,000.
Crazy. Did you ever consider foster care?
Well, we live in a tiny house.
Yeah.
And our tiny house at the time would not fit up to code because it has to have like locks on doors and those kind of things, which are things we didn't have. So we didn't even apply. We didn't even go down that road.
Because if you, let's say you foster care somebody and then you want to adopt them, are some of those adoption fees waived?
I think
Or-
most of them are.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think there's any fees with that. But
Do you know anything about that?
I know some people who have gone that route, and I think that's pretty much how it's structured.
and I do have some friends that have adopted, but that is amazing, and I'm very glad that people will do that. But for Destiny and I, that's not something at this point in our life that we felt comfortable doing, just because you're getting kids from, you don't know what age they are, and you don't know what sort of home life they're a lot of times it's really bad. And so for us being a new family, we just wanted a fresh start, and with the different difficulties with getting pregnant, we just thought this would be the best way to just do the adoption route
Right on.
right from the
sure.
baby. So I can remember she was born. We didn't know if it was going to be a boy or a girl, and I was so excited. Like, what's it going to be? What's it going to be? And it was a girl, and it's amazing.
You took her home straight from birth.
Yeah, 24 hours after she was born,
Crazy.
brought her home,
Yep.
and we've had her ever
Right on.
since.
You have Isaiah's family too, which I think we'll probably circle back.
Okay.
I think we both got thoughts.
Yeah.
Wheels are turning there as well. I'm excited to show that video here in a second, but just to continue to introduce you, because now we have Dr. Isaiah and wife Julia.
Yep. And then we have Finley, who's a little gal in the pink sweater, Bear in the yellow, and then Cedar just turned 1 year old. She's in the little rainbow color. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not that it's a public announcement, but I'm going to let it know we're pregnant with number 4 right now.
Woohoo! Congratulations!
Boom.
Yeah. So
You're feeling that quivered,
filling the quiver.
quicken.
Yes.
Blessed is a man.
Yeah.
Our children are a blessing from the Lord.
That's right.
Blessed is a man whose quiver is full of them.
Yeah.
So I'm just taking arrows from other people's quivers and sticking them in mine.
Still counts, I think. Yeah. Still a blessing.
Yes,
awesome.
absolutely.
Yeah. So then, we met Northwestern, Minneapolis. So how did you get to wanting to be a chiropractor?
It started with the family. So my dad always figured out that at some point in time, personal responsibility for your own health plays a role into it. And when you run a smaller business or you're dependent on performing, you have to make sure that you're as healthy as possible, no matter where you're at, whether you're in China, whether you're in the South, the North, the East, the West. You have to make sure that you're healthy. So he had a very strict dietary regimen that he would make sure that he adhered to. And when we grew up, we became a part of that, because we would go on mission trips to Mexico, to China, and all these places. It doesn't mean that their food is worse. It's that just because your gut doesn't have certain bacteria, you might come in contact with some version of food poisoning that you're not ready for it. And so I can vividly remember whether I was 6, 7, 8, all the way to 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. We would go to these foreign countries, and all of the people that were with us could eat pretty much whatever they wanted, right? We couldn't. And of course, everyone's always like, well, why? Well, we had just become so accustomed to not eating a ton of like sugar, not eating like things that pop. This guy's never had a drink. I've had one, but that was because it was
Did you lose a bet?
No, basketball game.
Never, ever had soda pop.
Nope.
Dr. Pepper, Mountain Dew, Pepsi, none of that.
No.
Never touched
Now, if
it.
you're talking about like carbonated stuff, I've definitely had that.
Sure.
But when we're talking about the big companies, no.
No.
The one time I did have it, I was at a basketball game, and I just came off the bench. You know how they have the Gatorade lined up behind the bench? I was thirsty, and I just grabbed the first one I saw and chugged it. I don't know if my coach knows, but that was that I took a drink of his, and it was full of I have no idea which one it was. It was a dark one.
Sure.
So I tasted it, and I was like, what is this? And I spit it out. And so technically I have drank some, but never fully.
Crazy.
Yeah. So that was actually Dad and Mom who actually trained us, like, hey, we just don't do what everyone else does. And so it really didn't become an issue for us when we were traveling to not be able to eat different types of foods, which actually kept us super healthy. And that kind of played a role into other things, whether it was, we know that health is multifaceted, nutrition, exercise, got to make sure you have like great oxygen supply, When we talk about detoxing, making sure there's not a lot of toxins in your body, we also want to make sure you're as healthy as possible, and that can be represented in many different ways. And there was a specific issue. So back to your question, there was a specific issue that my brother Jake had. We were actually riding unicycles, and it was on the unicycle. I don't know how this happened. We were riding a unicycle, and part of our routine is doing a pinwheel where we all grab hands and we rotate around, which requires you to like look on the inside and grab that person's hand. And while you have your hand up, well, Jake couldn't turn his head to the left, and so he was like his eyes were in, but his neck was not rotated. And I want to say I was about like 13 or 14 years old.
This was at a Creighton University halftime.
Yeah, good job. Shout out to Creighton. We've been to Creighton many, many times over the years. But at this one, Jake just wasn't performing optimally. And my question was, with a crazy good diet, with crazy good exercise, with a young person who's healthy, how did this happen? Why did this happen? And then feeling helpless to not be able to help him, right? So that's where the empathy and the sympathy kind of kicked in. So Jake ended up laying on the floor of the bus and just kind of like nursing his jammed neck, obviously. And that's kind of what got me on the path of when I went to graduation. I was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I think I want to be a chiropractor. But I didn't obviously know what it took, so I ended up going to SDSU. Went 4 years there, was able to have really good grades, met some amazing people who really did push me. And some of them were family members, some of them were faculty. And because of the grades, ended up transitioning over to the pre-med field, wanting to be a surgeon. But then having a conversation with my dad, he was like, well, we don't necessarily take a lot of medications. It doesn't really line up with how you live. We live more of like a wellness-based lifestyle versus I don't want to say a pill-based lifestyle, but more of like reactive-based lifestyle. And so I would have been dealing with other things that I probably wouldn't have like 100% agreed with, right? Because a lot of people,
like if I can interject,
yeah, please,
it's no secret. Ibuprofen does not correct anything. Ibuprofen masks pain.
What? This is new.
Can it be useful for some scenarios? Sure.
Yeah.
But if you're out to correct the original issue that caused the pain that you're trying to mask, you cannot, you can't run to ibuprofen and expect any resolution to come from that.
Yeah, short-term solution to a long-term problem.
Correct. And we share a lot of the same philosophy. Like, let's get to the root cause of what caused that issue. And we found some solutions and some answers within the chiropractic philosophy. I'll even say that, because chiropractic is much more than just laying a body on a table and going crack every time. It's what's happening to the body through the innate intelligence and so on and so forth. But
well, this goes back to the check engine light in the car. The check engine light comes on. You can do two things. You can fix the problem or unplug the light.
Yeah, can I just put a sticky note? Can I just put a little sticky note up there and just pretend it didn't?
Ignore it. Make it say ibuprofen. Just put that on there. It'll cover up the problem.
No, I will say that there's a time and a place for all of those things,
right.
Especially when you have injuries. I mean, when we go to these other countries, it allows us to actually get a perspective of what their health care system like. When we were in Poland, we were at a basketball camp, and there was a group of people that were probably in their 20s, and they were jumping off of this dock that was in a river. And obviously you're in a foreign country. And so you kind of know that the construction might be a little bit different. We have great coding. We have all of these things that we take for granted here. And there was no signs about how deep it was. And this is when I was probably, I want to say a junior in college. So I definitely had a lot of health knowledge from being on a dissection team and those type of things. But there was a gentleman that had dove off, and it was probably 4 feet deep.
Oh my.
And it was late at night. And they weren't even a part of the camp that we were with, but they were on campgrounds. And so we run over there, and everyone's like, well, what happened? And this guy couldn't move. And I remember thinking we're in Zaksteli, Poland, which is a small community. And literally they didn't have a first aid team there. It took the ambulance a long time to get there. And then on top of that, they didn't even know first aid at this camp. So I was the one who was like, okay, my brother and I had taken an EMT course. And so it was all stabilize the neck, don't move the body. Okay, let's check and make sure his spine's okay. So we rotated him over. made sure that there was nothing like protruding or anything like that. We laid him back over, but he couldn't feel anything. And obviously there's a language barrier too. So it's hard to communicate as like one of 7 Americans there. Man. To the Polish like youth that are there, plus the pastor. So you have an interpreter. So it was, we live in a country where it's so amazing that if I call 911 and the ambulance shows up, we got some dang qualified people to take care of whatever the issue is. And so when it comes to reactionary medicine, emergencies, those type of things, like we are like top. But when it comes to wellness care, when it comes to chronic conditions, that's where I like to challenge the system and say, we've got some work to do. We definitely need to make sure we're taking a look at many different aspects versus just taking a look at like one thing and saying like, oh, pain, let's just get rid of it. Why is the pain there? Yeah. So Jacob really influenced that situation with Jake, influenced me to be like, how can I help?
Yeah. The neck injury couldn't turn to the left. Right.
Couldn't turn to the left. Mm-hmm. And we had already done so many things to, I would say, try to stay as healthy as possible. And yet things still happen.
Right. Now, and you graduated from SDSU also with what degree did you?
I got a degree in HPER, which is Health, Physical Education, and Recreation.
Okay.
And I went to school not really knowing what I wanted to do, knowing I wanted to keep traveling, but I didn't want performing to be the only thing that I could do. So I wanted to have a backup, or not a backup, but just to be more well-rounded. So I believe going to school was a good decision, and I definitely would do it again. But if I did it again, I would definitely probably go more down the nutrition route.
Sure.
Because once I started, it's like you get so far in that
it's hard to switch.
It's hard to back up and go another direction.
Plus it takes money.
Yeah.
It does take money.
Right. Yeah. And then you might put yourself 6 months behind.
Yes.
Or a year behind. Yeah.
And it's awesome. So there's definitely a health basis coming from you guys, which from your degrees, but even just life and lifestyle.
Well, and I want to add one thing to what he said is,
sure.
And it's this: when we would travel overseas, like you're right, your gut is being exposed to just a ton of things you're not used to, and repeatedly on several trips, because we would travel with a bunch of groups, we would be the only ones who didn't get sick.
Sure.
You know, now sometimes we were like, "Oh, Dad, we're really hungry. We want to have that." Dad would be like, "Nope, don't eat that. Nope, you're not going to eat that." But it always paid off in the end because we were able to keep going and keep performing and keep our health. And, you know, other people were sitting there, you know, sick in their hotel room for half the trip because, they decided to eat something that, no, they wouldn't have eaten at home.
I just had this conversation in my office with someone, and they had some kind of weird thing going on. And I knew, like, the lifestyle and the nutrition and the diet was not, like, up to par. Correct. The standard American diet is nicknamed the SAD diet for a reason, because it's full of sugar, full of grain, full of dairy, a lot of things that are inflammatory and just not good for you. Okay. So I was leading this conversation along, just saying, if you focused on better nutrition, do you feel like that would help or hurt your body and what you're experiencing? And she's like, well, I mean, it would help. Like, yes, absolutely, it would. And so she said, I feel like I know that, but I don't think a lot of other people know that. And that actually, like, I stepped back. I was like, I'm like, you're right. And so there's a difference between knowing what you need to do and doing it, knowing what you need to do and not doing it, but then not knowing what you need to do and not being in the ballpark to even do the right thing at the right time, which is like, I mean, geez, is that not biblical or what? Yep. Where is that?
Can't do what you don't know.
For sure. Yep. We can get there too, but it's just, you know, so here we are.
I would challenge that though and say that if we're talking about the level of information that we have, I mean, for instance, if you take a very popular thing that just, you know, someone is overweight, right? And someone goes on Google, you can find 15,000 things to do on that. And so I would say that with the information that we have, I don't know if ignorance, we can say ignorance anymore because it's information's at our fingertips. I don't know a person right now over the age of 20 that doesn't have a phone. And so I would say that it does boil down to, yes, people know what to do, but even me, right? I have health goals that I want to achieve. Do I know how to achieve them? Yes. Do I do them? No.
Not all the time.
Not all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if I want to get bigger, right? If I wanted to gain like 20 pounds of muscle, I know what I have to do to do it. But it boils down to it, am I going to do it? Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. Love it. The last thing I want to do to introduce you guys before we get to the meat of our podcast is this the video of Caleb spinning. So while you're getting that ready. Here.
So this is actually my dad and I. My dad used to hold the world record for spinning the most basketballs from 93 to 98. And then he lost that world record. So he had actually spun up to 18 basketballs.
Because before you get there, okay, so don't show the video yet, but just why should you eat healthy? Lay it down for us. Give us 60 to 90 seconds, both of you, tag team.
He's a faster thinker. I'll let him go first.
Go first.
Well, if you a ball that keeps rolling will roll longer. So I picture that as my health. So if I can keep my health ball rolling, that's the longer I'm going to go. My dad is now 57, 58 years old, but he's in almost as good a shape as I am, if not better. Why? Because every day he makes the right decision. He gets up, he works out, he drinks water, he eats correctly. And if you keep doing that, the same thing with my Aunt Tanya, she just keeps going. And when you keep going like that, your health is going to go. Now, you have your diet that goes along with it. You have your lifestyle that goes along with it. But then, it's three things: physical, mental, and spiritual. If you're physical,
the equation for health.
Yes. Yep. Physical, mental, and spiritual. If you get out in one of those areas, you're unbalanced. And the same, so your attitude is so important. The goals you set for yourself are so important, and how you live your life is so important. And so, as we look to this video in what we're doing, do you want to add anything to that equation?
I will, yeah.
Go ahead.
You can't afford not to.
Can't afford not to.
So I like, the first thing you said, a ball that continues to roll will roll longer, as in a direct correlation to life, like the quality of your life. And
that's why you see all these older folks, right? They'll fall and they'll break their hip, and then within a few months they're done.
Statistically, that's not a good outcome because pneumonia is more likely. A lot of other issues and diseases with lungs and heart can become a thing. Yeah. I love it. Great statistic. So I love that analogy. And then I hear you're saying because you can't afford not to.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, go on.
Well, eating healthy is expensive, right? But so is surgery. So is long-term chronic conditions. And so people who like to challenge that and say, I wish I could, but I can't afford to, or I wish I could, but it's too expensive, or it's hard to shop.
And I can't tell you how many times we've heard that. I mean, there's a specific instance where we have a friend who his hospital bills got so high, he had to sell his house and move to a smaller house, right? So when you start to look at that, and he would say, oh man, but it's so expensive. Well, was it worth it? You no longer have your nice house. You had to sell it and downgrade. So, and there's also the common phrase, you can afford whatever you want to.
Yes.
I mean, if you really want something, you're going to do what it takes to get that. I'm just surprised that people treat their dog's health and their pet health more than they treat their own health. Oh. They make sure their dogs are going to the dentist. They make sure their dogs have the best food, and they make sure their dogs are, he's a little overweight, so we're going to start. But it's why can't you do that with yourself? Your life is worth so much more.
And one thing to add on that, the reason why I say you can't afford not to is you either pay for it now or you pay for it later. And I would say that a lot of people would look at the only options is what's in the grocery store. And I would say, I would challenge that a little bit. There's a lot of resources, especially here in the U.S., that we have co-ops. You can buy in bulk. You can budget. I mean, there's no excuses if we actually wanted to get it done. You prioritize what you value. And I know that that's not a popular thing, especially when we're talking about, poverty and that sort of thing, because a lot of people who are in these larger communities, their access to healthy food is limited. We live in rural America, and so it's a lot easier for those of us who are in small town Iowa, small town South Dakota, small town Nebraska to maybe have more access to healthier foods. And I've listened to some of the people that you've had on, and they've talked about the accessibility to healthy meats, accessibility to healthy groceries, which is a little bit different with some of those inner city areas. And so, I mean, we definitely have some changes that we would probably like to make in a perfect world. But for the most part, you could afford it if you actually wanted it. Yeah. And I would stand by what I say is what I'm saying, even if somebody was in the poverty realm, which I would say our family was at certain points in time, especially growing up, and they still found ways to make it work. I mean, we use the phrase rice and beans,
Yeah.
Ate a lot of those to the point where I love them to this day because it was a staple growing up.
Yeah. Rice and beans goes a long way. And
for sure.
Come from a lot
Dave
of kids.
Ramsey there.
Mm-hmm. Is that what he says?
That's what he says. Yeah, Dave Ramsey live on rice and beans. That's what he says. Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking too, you talk about the affordability of eating healthy, and there's the only way to do it isn't to go to Trader Joe's or Whole Foods or wherever and get it. You drive through Jefferson, just on the main road, you'll see 3 greenhouses in people's backyards in town. You can grow a lot of food in a greenhouse in your backyard
Yeah.
through most of the year. And seeds aren't expensive.
No.
A pack of seeds will cost you less than a 6-pack of ramen.
Yeah.
And it'll feed you better for longer.
But you know what that takes?
Work.
Time, dedication.
And developing a skill, which is something I want to come back after we do the video. I want to ask you guys about developing skills because it seems like you have developed a lot of them over your life. And I think that's a valuable process to dig into. But we should watch this video. I'm intrigued at what I'm seeing on the screen.
I don't
here.
think you've seen this.
I have not. I haven't seen any of this. I'm amazed. While we were playing the other one, I'm sitting there Howie, wow, this is amazing. I'm impressed, guys.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Ever since I was younger, watching this, we would sit there and we would flip through the Guinness book up in the attic of a little barn we had. We had a big box of these Guinness books, and we would always flip through. And every time I got to page 223, there was a picture of my dad next to Michael Jordan in the Guinness World Record book. And I thought it was just the absolute coolest thing. Well, I always wanted to break that record, and Dad had tried to spin 28 a few times and just wasn't able to get it. And then a guy actually broke his record, and that guy actually ended up spinning up a 28. So in 2018, I said, Dad, it's time. We need, I was 29 at the time. I said, all right, we got to get the stuff out. So he and I, and actually Isaiah and Jake, we spent some time kind of just reworking a few things, seeing what, where we had a few problems in this system, and then we made it work. So this is actually my dad and I spinning 30 basketballs each. This is when we broke the record. Now, we've not submitted this to Guinness or anything yet, so nothing's official, but it's my hope that within the next year or two, we'll get this submitted and my dad and I can hold the world record together. That's what I would love.
That's cool.
Yeah. So
when was
as
this?
You can see, this is in 2018. In October of 2018, I believe, is when this video was taken. But you can see it's very precise movements, and see even that little thing that I just flipped up right there. That there was one of the things that we worked on, because it's well, how in the world do you make this work so you can get that many going?
Look at that.
Well, right there, that's 30. And then my dad is right behind me, coming up here just a second. And he got it. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's 30 basketballs each for a total of 60.
Crazy.
So I can't do that.
No.
No. So that right there, that is outside of Isaiah's realms of possibility. And so it's so cool that he has taken it to a next level. If you want to know, I was the one who videoed. Right?
Really?
Yes.
I wanted to be a part of this. It's let me help. That takes a lot of practice. And Caleb spent a year working on that.
Yep. Wow. Well, I had to learn to spin the basketball the other way with my opposite hand, right? So you're relearning with your weak hand stuff, and there's different things you got to do something like that. But yeah, you have any questions on it?
How do you spin a basketball? I've never been able to figure that one out.
Yeah. Well, I know we don't have a basketball down here.
Another
but
time, maybe.
Yeah. That's a conversation for off podcast.
Yeah, cool.
We can go upstairs and make it happen.
Sure.
There's a unicycle in the garage too.
That's right.
Really?
Yeah.
You can ride it, can't you?
I have successfully ridden about the length of a basketball court.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't just go wherever I want, whenever I want. But it's kind of my hope that by Bell Tower, I'll be a pro.
We'll throw you in the show.
Honestly, I would love to at least ride with you in the parade.
Let's go.
And then be that guy.
10-footer?
That might be a bit beyond. Just keep me on the ground. Keep me close to the ground.
I got a 6-footer I'll bring.
Okay, maybe I can handle
ride that.
Yeah.
Goes
Okay.
back to kind of that protection, right? You have to think about different things.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Every
So
time I
it's-
get on, when I get on my unicycle, I think about those things. So I double and triple check things.
What
your
are you
chain.
thinking about? You're saying protection.
My body is. I work, right. I see multiple clients that rely on me every week, right.
So you don't want to go into work in a wheelchair and be like,
That's
well,
correct.
just lay down. I'll.
And that's so that kind of sits back there to whereas before it was oh, cool. If I need to take time off, Caleb's got my backup. He can cover my spot, but nobody covers my spot in the practice. And so I think about those things, whether I think somebody said David Beckham's legs were insured for $2 million or something, some crazy number, probably even more. Right. And that really made me think of oh man, that's sad because he can't go skiing. Right. And he can't do those things. But I feel a little bit of that pressure when I get on, so I make sure to check.
Well, and talking about that, I
chain,
work with wood all the time. So I kid you not, I am so careful whenever I'm using a table saw or a bandsaw, because if I lose a finger, I mean, that is detrimental to what I do. Absolute game changer. So you're very careful to watch those fingers.
In college, we had kind of a yearly tradition. We'd just do our own fireworks, 4th of July. We had a guy from Kansas, and he would bring some M80s.
Oh, my.
Do you know what an M80 is?
Yeah. I do know what an M80 is.
Those were the equivalent of a cherry bomb, correct?
Pretty much, yeah. And, I mean, you would light it, and it's not a long fuse. And then you either light it and you run away real quick, or, I mean, we put it in a watermelon. A watermelon was just gone. It's like, what if that just, like, went off in my hand? I mean, my career is done, gone. So...
Reminds me of when Ken was on, you guys, I remember hearing you talking, you said the investment's in the hands right now.
Right.
You know, the retirement's in the hands.
Correct. Yep. Yes.
Yeah. Don't do anything to mess it up.
Right. Yeah. Right.
You know, you're talking about the firecracker, you know, the Bobcat ones that you're putting, you know, you get in a little strip and you light. The first one has a long green fuse, but the rest of them have that little paper fuse that burns really fast.
Sure.
Well, when we bought fireworks, we would buy the big pack and then we'd separate them out so that, you know.
Because you're cheap.
Poor man's fireworks, yeah.
Sure.
And we would try to light that and throw it real quick. Well, one time, one of those blew up in my hand. I mean, it didn't hurt me other than just really stung my hand.
Wow.
You know, it's just that little tiny black cat. But
scares you.
Yeah, and you just think, what if that had been something more dangerous? So the investments are in the hands.
Some risks just aren't worth the moment of fun.
Says the guy who wants to race.
Well, yeah, you know, that's honestly the conversation, though, because, like, I tell Taylor that the context of this is there's a racetrack that I'm actually going to later in Boone where they race, like, dirt track cars and really fast. And every time we go by, I've been into cars at different points, and I tell Taylor, you know, I would love to race sometime. And she says, you can't do that. I'm like, well, why not? I think I could. And she says, well, are you going to, like, roll up in a wheelchair on Sunday to preach the message? And I'm not. And, you know, I believe I'd be protected and well and all that anyway. But it's also good to use wisdom and make decisions that.
Well, he and I both bought motorcycles at one time.
Yeah.
I bought one, and he goes, oh, that's cool. He bought one. And... you know, we had those motorcycles for, a year?
Yeah, a summer.
Yeah, a summer. And over the course of that summer, just like I love to go fast too much.
Yep.
And I just finally said, okay, you know what? This is not worth it.
Right.
10 seconds of a joyride, you know what?
Change your life forever.
You could be a great driver, and you could lose your front tire. You just don't know what's going to happen. So
I put a motorcycle in the ditch like 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago.
And you're probably fortunate that you're
right. Yeah. I mean, I rode it out of the ditch. I was fortunate in that way. I had a lunch meeting during a work day, and I had come out of this town driving like north on this highway, and it was kind of a strange exit out of town. You like would go up a hill, and then at the top it kind of curved off to the left. So I get to the top of this hill. And like as you come over the peak, there's gravel washed across the road as I'm going into the turn. And it just sucked me off into the shoulder. And I thought, well, I'm not pulling it back, so might as well ride it down.
Yep.
And so
it's probably the smartest decision.
It's the best thing I could have done. So I rode it into the ditch, slowed it down enough that the impact didn't break anything other than that front headlight and dent it up a bit.
And you probably weren't going terribly fast.
No, not terribly. I mean, when I hit the ditch, I was probably going like 30. And then slowed it down to, 15 when it actually went over. So put a nice dent in the side and bruised my leg, but I rode it home and was well enough to continue working that day.
Yeah.
So
well, my dad did ride motorcycles with a good buddy of his. And he actually got in a really bad motorcycle accident. And
the situation of the motorcycle is he actually had a girl behind him, but he was passing a car that had a blinker to go right. But at the last second, that person pulled in front of him. And so he hit that person, which was an older lady in a car, and it just drove him headfirst into a tree.
Yep.
Wow. And in fact, they pronounced him dead that night.
Wow.
And they actually told Bruce, hey, your friend died.
It was my dad's roommate in college.
Wow.
They're best friends to this day.
He lived, but to this day, he lives, he had to have his leg amputated, and he only has 10% use of his legs. And so we've gone to China with him. It's been incredible. He's a great friend and love him to death. And
because of that accident, though, he is probably one of the most mentally strong individuals or human beings I've ever known. Mm-hmm. It is incredible. Like, you talk about people who hit a roadblock, and all of a sudden, like, their life is like over and they lose everything. And then you see these random, like, shining stars of, like, they hit the roadblock, and instead of, like, all of a sudden going down that ditch, right, they just, like, shine after. Wow. I mean, the guy wrote a book. He runs a successful practice.
They told him he'd never have children. He's got
family.
Wow.
5 children. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
he inspired us as kids. And he was like, I would say, like, because he went on some of these trips with us, it's almost like a second dad. Mm-hmm. And
honestly, at the end of the day, I got rid of my motorcycle because of my respect for him.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's just like, I could just end up just like that, if I'm not careful. And so, sold the motorcycle.
Yeah.
Every time I see one, I'll be like, oh, that'd be fun to ride. And then I'm good.
But you pick your people for motivation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be somebody who is, like, away from you. It could be somebody who's like your next door neighbor. Yeah. Or in this case, it was my dad's best friend. And it was like somebody that who didn't have all the physical capabilities that we had, because we had talked about, like, the importance of having, like, health and wellness and functioning fully, right? Well, he, by an accident, did not have half of his body functioning, but yet he still pushed through that and did more. He walked and did all the walking that we did when we went to China. Wow. He flew.
They told him he'd never walk again. I mean, it's
amazing.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And he was a quarterback,
Yeah.
He was a quarterback on the football team. And it's just, you go from that to, potentially a wheelchair for the rest of your life.
That really is an inspiration, though, especially when you think, like, what limits do I have? Here's this guy doing incredible things. Like, how much more?
But that could be any one of us.
Are we capable of? Mm-hmm. I think that's the question. How much are you capable of? And
it gets back to the mortality of life.
What's the guy's name and what's the book called?
Tragic Blessing.
Tragic Blessing.
Brett Merkel.
Yes.
Amazing. Yeah. One more thing on that. You just mentioned, like, reflecting on your own life and realizing, like, oh, I can't ride a unicycle, or I can't do that. And you say can't to this guy, and he was told you can't have kids, you can't walk again, you can't lift and be active, you can't. He was been told he can't, like, his whole, like, recovery period, and yet he's like,
watch me
essentially do it. Screw you, watch me do it. And that's motivation, because you see a guy who has chronic pain, like, you think, like,
you ever heard of phantom pains?
No.
So phantom pain is a pain for a leg that you don't have, but it feels like it's there. Yeah. So I remember we were riding to China, and so you're sitting for 13 hours, and sitting is one of the most uncomfortable things for him to do. And I asked him once, and I said, hey, what pain are you feeling right now? He said it felt like someone was taking an auger bit and just drilling it up his foot, but the foot's not there,
But
and so
it's there. Is that just because, like, the nerve ends?
The nerve ends, yep. It's just a phantom pain. And so, I've read his book. I've heard all his stories. As little kids, we heard so many of our dad's stories, and then, we want to hear all his stories to be like, hey, can you tell us a story? Tell us a story. So, stories are where it's at.
When it gets back to that, when we talk about, like, being healthy, all right, and people saying, well, I can't because of, I mean, you could look at him and just say, he was told you can't because of this, and he said,
and he had a very legitimate reason to just give up.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Doesn't have to be that way.
And now he's a very successful lawyer, doing very well for himself and his family, and so they say you are the average of your 5 best friends. So I've always made it a point to pick good friends, and Philip, one of my great friends, Isaiah. So I've surrounded myself with people who will lift me up, not pull me down. So sorry, guys, if I pull you down a little bit, but
we finally figured it out.
You've been pulling me up for a long time, so it's good. Yeah.
I think that's critical. What you talked about, that attitude of, like, you said, screw you, watch me do it. Where do you think that comes from? Is that something that can be learned? Is it about the friends you've got? Where do you think that comes from in people? Have you guys ever experienced that in some way? Like, that attitude, have you ever had to apply that for yourself?
Well, I think when you look at that right there, like, I don't know how it happened, but I'm the shortest guy in my family. But I've never let I've never let that stop me. And I've tried to overcome things. Like, I'm left-handed. My dad's right-handed. So everything he does great with his right hand, I have to learn how to do somehow with my left hand. And so it's all about taking your weaknesses and trying to make them your strengths. So there's ways that using my left hand I found can be more of a strength for me rather, more of an asset rather than a downfall. And so those different things that we can do with our weaknesses to make them strengths is what I would say how you do it.
Do you have another example of that, or do you have an example of that?
Well, it's easy to kind of go down the injury route, right? Because all of a sudden your mind just kind of goes down that wormhole. Like I bruised a nerve in my arm from a four-wheeler accident, and I lost all the extensors in my wrist. And so because of that, it was actually kind of weird that even though I had all blood flow, because the nerve was damaged, I didn't have any of the extensors, so I couldn't flex my hand up. And it was
could only do this.
Crazy.
Could only grab. Like
Strange.
he could grab things, but he didn't have any ability to pull his hand up.
Wild.
So we would go and do shows with him, and he's got this one like limp hand that's like flopping everywhere, and he's trying to dribble a basketball. So he would take, and I'm sorry for sharing the story, but I would be watching this. He's taking his hand and he's flinging it up, and then using the downward strength that he does have to like re-grab the ball and push it down. So it's kind of like flopping all over the place. But
he acts like I was actually good at it. I wasn't.
No, but he was making it work, you know. And how long was that? 3-4 months before you finally started to get some movement back?
Yeah, it didn't fully come back until about 3 months. Wow. But for a solid month, it was like limp, right? And I remember laying in bed about 4 to 5 weeks afterwards. The nerve had somehow started firing, and I just like poop, and like it popped up, but it gave me hope, right? And so that was something that going through that period, even though I didn't have this, because of people like Brett and my dad and encouraging you and pushing you forward, it was like, well, what can you do with like your right hand? And us 3 boys, and my brother Josiah and my mom are all left-handed. So I'm left-hand dominant, shooting-wise, everything. So it inspired me to do more right-handed. So I actually became a well-balanced, even basketball player as a result of not being so dominant with the left hand. So turning a bad situation into something that could have been better. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, like even though that was a really small thing, it wasn't painful. It was more of just like in your head. It's nerve-wracking. So I couldn't imagine like somebody who deals with a long-term issue and how much that affects the brain and like where the hope comes from and how you continually have intrinsic motivation for those pushing through. Because I got hope after 5 weeks. I got hope and I hung on to that and went forward. And I feel incredibly blessed by that. But I know that there's some people who don't necessarily get that. Yeah. So that's not necessarily like, oh, look what I can do. But it taking a bad situation and trying to turn it into something that was good, even though it didn't turn into a chronic issue.
Is there any like historical figure? Because we all like history.
Yeah.
I mean, you read history books for fun about World War II is what you were dropping last podcast down there. A historical figure that you feel like rubbed off on you in a very influential way, like this type of story, something that gave you hope, really drove you, inspired you to do something.
Yeah, I named my son after him.
Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Yeah, my son's name is Dietrich Crevier. And it doesn't necessarily flow like you want a name to flow, but it was so important to me. That gentleman, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, for those people that don't know, he was a German minister in Nazi Germany at the time he's one of my like role models because he grew up with a very same Lutheran, German, loyal ideology. And then when the entire country is kind of following that same pattern, he and a group of ministers and a number of other people were individuals that said, no, this is wrong. What are we going to do about it? And so they found different ways to combat those regimes. And so when the entire society and culture of what their country thought was normal, he and a bunch of people were like, no, that's wrong. We're going to go with something different. And in the end, his story is so influential because he's somebody who I don't know, and as a Christian, theologically, it's challenging to talk about how the role of Christians in government and what should we do? Should we be pacifists? Should we be active in the military? Should we be active in the government? We have a lot of denominations in our culture of Christians that would say, no, we should not be a part of the military at all. And yet we all have family members that participated in the military, right? And so are you saying that what they do is not valid? Those are all challenging questions. I'm somebody who thinks that the military is a very important part of protecting our people and protecting what we hold sacred. But Dietrich Bonhoeffer was somebody who wrestled with those things as a minister, of being like, I'm a shepherd, a teacher. And he did things that subverted the Lutheran authority, because if you look at the bishop at the time, who was the head of the entire church, it was appointed by Adolf Hitler. And this gentleman started taking the entire church and leading the church in the way of how Nazi Germany was going. And I think it's like Karl Barth, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and a number of other influential pastors created the Confessing Church, which they started their own sect of seminaries, schools. And with that, they started, getting Jews out of Germany and those type of things. But in the end, he also got involved with the Abwehr, I believe is how you pronounce it. There's the SS, which everyone knows, but there's also like I believe it was a domestic version of the SS. And those two entities were competing for like the top spot for the secret police, essentially. And a lot of the leadership in the Abwehr didn't like what Hitler was doing. And so there was a number of individuals, when you hear of movies like Valkyrie, Dietrich Bonhoeffer and certain family members were actually a part of the back end of that. And so he had actually made choices to subvert government when it was a complicated issue. There was pastors that didn't want to become involved. He made a decision to become involved. So I don't necessarily think that every decision he made was correct, but I think that having the guts to say, I'm still going to make the decision. In the end, he was captured by the Nazis. He was an unmarried man captured by the Nazis, spent years in jail. And right when they could actually hear the bombs of the Allies coming into the prison, and they found him, he was hanged, right? And so it's an emotional roller coaster for him, because he goes from being this amazing, Germany was coming up as a rising economy. He's a pastor. He has connections all over the world, England, America, and he was actually using those connections for what he thought was right. And when you look at inspiration, he inspires me because he made tough decisions in time of crisis. And those are decisions that I don't think any of us realize how good we have it right now, because of people like him who are willing to stand up and step up, even though his entire country, his entire society, and his entire culture is saying, hey, this is right, this is okay. Yeah. He said no. And so I named my son Dietrich after him. And if anybody wants a book, Prophet, Pastor, Spy by Eric Metaxas is my favorite book.
Right on.
It's amazing. And it's a thick one. It's 400 pages.
Thick boy.
Yeah. And I think one of the phrases in there from Karl Barth, and I'll end with this, is I'm going to screw this up a little bit, but it was they came for the Bolsheviks, and I did not speak out for them. And then they came for the communists, and I didn't speak out for them. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out for them. And then they came for me, and then there was no one left to speak for me. And that just hits me to my core, because we have to fight for what's right, not just what our society is actually doing. So thanks for the monologue on that, but I think it's important to give background and context to who Dietrich Bonhoeffer was, and how a lot of times we forget history and how we might repeat it if we're not careful.
So good.
Very. I don't even need to say anything. That he took that whole question and just wrapped it up.
Yeah, you did. That was great.
It's fantastic.
You made one thing you said that I wrote down here was that this is why I like superhero movies. I think I've said this before, is because they put people in impossible situations and make them figure out how to get out of it. That's also why I like Mission Impossible movies, is because Tom Cruise's character thinks how to flip the entire script, the entire table, to create an outcome that's favorable for him. And just the way that they think is so influential. To make tough decisions in times of crisis is when your character, whatever's inside you, deep,
right,
that you're not accessing on a regular basis, it will be forced to come out. And you will either run scared because that's, what's deep down in you, and you haven't built up that character in you, or you'll stand and make a tough decision because you'll stick with what's right. And we all want to be that superhero. We all want to be the knight in shining armor, but we were
created in God's image. We
were.
And being created in Christ's image, our or someone who wants to be the savior. You know, one guy, I remember having a conversation with him. I love this guy. His name's Big James Henderson. He actually was the first man to ever lift over 700 pounds without any.
And by big, he doesn't mean just strong.
No, this guy is
a mountain.
Didn't he bend a frying pan?
Oh, I mean, he can do all that stuff. Like, he takes two phone books together and just rips them up. And okay. Anyways, he told me, he said, you know, sometimes people are going to come into your life and you're going to be in a position where maybe you can save them. But he goes, I would encourage you in those moments to always pass them on to the Savior. So don't become the Savior, because we want to do that. You know, here, let me help you. And I feel like a lot of people in marriage relationships do this. They meet someone and like, oh, I'm going to try to save this person by marrying this person, when the reality of that is they should have led that person on to the Savior, not try to become the Savior, because in becoming the Savior, you just create a whole host of other problems. Yep. So,
and like Philip's comment about like superheroes, right? We love superhero movies. And I think one of the reasons why we love them is because, and I don't want to say everyone loves them, because I know a lot of people, like you're a historian, right?
Yeah, I'm not big on superhero
exactly.
movies.
But you would like to be one,
but I think
you?
like Dietrich Bonhoeffer, like that's a real life superhero.
That's what I mean, yeah. So that's a real life superhero. The difference between the movies and real life is that 99 times out of 100, what happens to the superhero? They're dead.
Unless it's Marvel.
That's what he's saying.
You look at all the people that that might inspire us in some shape or fashion.
Right.
A lot of times.
Oh, you mean like in real life?
In real life.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And that's the point, is like the superheroes that we think of, like, wow, that's that person. I want to be that person. A lot of times they were killed, or they were prosecuted, murdered, tortured for whether it was beliefs or poor situations, or in this case was just he was convicted. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was convicted for trying to subvert the government, and they didn't like that, and so they hanged him along with other treasonous individuals.
Yep.
And so, like the superheroes that we like the superhero movies because the superhero's still alive at the end. Mm. And I think in real life,
I don't like that.
I know you don't
I don't know about you, but I don't like those. That's one of the reasons I don't like superhero movies, because they've always got the good ending, and the truth is, like, the world's not that friendly.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're correct, but I think that you give a lot more credit, or you don't. No, I think you give a lot more credit maybe to, like, humans don't want that. Humans don't want. We live in a very cushy life right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
and humans don't want to know that the superhero dies. Like if somebody, like when, I mean, DC
who wants to deal with reality.
DC killed Superman. But
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that, right? But guess what they did? They found a way to bring him back to life.
Oh,
right.
Well, good.
Right. And you're happy now. I'm kidding.
Indifferent.
No, I would just. We live in
Isaiah, you spoiled the movie for me. I had not seen it yet.
Oh no! DC killed Superman a long time ago.
No, it's been a long time.
Like it's even in the trailer. Like Superman dies.
I thought maybe he died again or something. You know?
No, I think they remade it, but.
I think that's a great point to bring out, though, about the reality, because I don't think people always want to consider the price that has to be paid. You know, like I want the results without paying the price. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it goes, I mean, take it to health, take it to whatever you want to take it to being able to spin 30 basketballs. I mean, I can't spin one, and it's because I haven't paid any price to learn how to do that. You know?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, Philip, you were talking about flipping the tables, you know, and that's amazing, because I think that's what Christ has done for us at the end of the day. Satan was trying to kill Jesus, not to create a savior for us, but in doing what he did, he created a circumstance such that Christ gave up his life for us so that we could have eternal life. So obviously, God works in such mysterious ways that, you know, things work out. When you look back, hindsight is 20/20. But looking ahead, you don't know what's going to happen. And the same thing for like Satan. He had no idea that by doing what he was doing, he was actually, you know, there's one guy who phrased it, brought the world to Jesus' feet. Didn't know that in the very act of crucifying him, that this is what he was doing.
Yeah, he probably thought he was winning.
Oh, he thought he was winning.
I got him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I got him. And no, it was just the beginning of him losing.
Right.
So, yeah.
Great point.
Flip the tables.
flip the tables.
I'll be curious. Like, so I picked Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Who would you pick?
Yeah.
I mean, did I steal somebody from
I
you?
mean, you came with so much thunder.
Well, I have a
On
son
that
named
one?
after him. I have to think about it. Tell you what,
Yeah,
we'll
can't
let you
do that
think.
lightly,
Well,
right?
let me
I know who Isaac's going to pick.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Do
I would
you?
love
Yeah.
to hear. I would love to hear.
Tell me who.
Theodore Roosevelt.
Oh my gosh, that's exactly who I was going to say.
Really?
And there's a specific story about him that I love, and it's when he was giving a speech and someone actually shot him in the middle of a speech.
Haven't gotten there yet in the biographies.
Okay, but
Don't spoil it.
Great.
no, but he
Might as well not even read it.
actually it hit part of his speech, is what he did. But what he do? He kept talking for an hour and
finished the
45
speech,
and
right?
Finished the speech.
Yeah.
So when you look at that, like battling through adversity, battling through people who don't like you, like it doesn't matter how hard you try, there's going to be 5% of people that hate you no matter what you do. And the same thing in my line of work. No matter what I do, I can't get everyone to like me as much as I would like that.
Yep.
So that story has taught me to battle through adversity, battle through difficulties, even though, I mean, it's not someone shooting at me, but if he can handle that, how much can I handle?
Right.
Yeah.
What about yourself? What I mean, that's his reason for Teddy.
Was I right? Or is there someone else that sticks out?
Yeah, I mean, talking about like history, and yeah, probably him. For me, I really liked. I've learned mostly about his early life. I've got like a 3-part book series. I'm only one in, but
Okay.
One of the stories that stood out the most to me is about early in his life. He was like a really sick child. I mean, was weak, couldn't breathe, couldn't go outdoors. I mean, couldn't do anything. And his dad told him something one time, and I don't know if I'll get this quote exactly right, but he said, Teddy, your mind is going to want to take you places your body won't be able to carry you if you stay this way. And he started working out every day, and he learned how to box, and he became the great, adventurer and cowboy and everything else he was. And it's because he made a decision that I'm not going to stay the way that I am. I'm going to make decisions to live a full and effective life, and that's exactly what he did.
Now, we don't have to go into this too far, but just, he was talking about Teddy being stuck inside. As chiropractors and doctors, people who are very health mindset, do you think that him being stuck in the house was part of the problem? Not being out in the sunlight and actually not being out in the atmosphere?
Yeah, to some degree.
Okay.
I mean, there's always a time and a place for good movement, good sunlight, good oxygenation, that type of thing.
Okay.
It's always going to be good for your body.
There's also a time and a place for rest.
Time and a place for rest.
But I think.
But if you're resting all the time, I think.
I think to his point though, it was a different stimulus, right? If he was already inside, we knew it wasn't working. And I'm just going off of the minimal information that I have, but I would assume that played a huge role into why it helped him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
He started building his body. Yeah.
Many things after that, from boxing in college to going and fighting in Cuba and leading troops up roads that no one wanted to go down to fight the fight that needed to be fought.
Sounds like like a race car driver.
Huh? What? He was a pretty intense guy. But
Was he?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
From what I can tell. I mean,
That's awesome.
He'd travel out to the West for 3 months and kill 400 animals, throw them on his horse, bring them back home, and then head back out east to go dabble in politics for the other 8 months of the year and then go back. And it was just like, active life.
That does take a fearless,
Courageous
aspect.
heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to go out and do it, even though you're going to face adversity.
Oh, yeah.
At the end of the day, he didn't have to do all that.
No.
He didn't have to,
If
but
he did a
wanted to.
third of what he did, he would have been one of the most, iconic people. But he just wanted more. He had a vigor about life that I respect. And then I think, bringing that into like what I look at my life being purposed for, I think, man, Christians ought to live like that. We should have a vigor for life. Because, he wanted to just he wasn't like a solid, man of faith. And that wasn't part of his testimony. But I just think, the way he lived life with such intensity, I think if people lived like that, what a world it would be. We're talking about people that live like superheroes who just take life on and make every day a day that's worth living. Which is something that I think we have a challenge today. I think it's a good question. I consider that myself often and reflect, was that a day worth living? What I did today.
So how do you do that? How do you approach that, especially as a pastor? Because you get a multitude of people that listen to you, right? And whether you like it or not, you're on that pedestal, and people come to you that are older than you, smarter than you, stronger than you, fat, all of the above, and they ask you, Pastor,
taller than you.
Many are taller.
What should I do? Right? That's what do you tell them?
I tell people this: you don't want what Isaac Wangler thinks. I'm going to give you the word, and that's the best thing I can give you. So, I mean, if you want to hear some opinions, I can throw those at you, but the best thing I have for you is the word of God. And so my day to day,
do you ever use it as like a cop out though, for like a situation where maybe you want to give your opinion, but you feel like you shouldn't. So you just say, well, I'll just tell you what the word says. When in reality, maybe you do have an opinion that would be great advice.
You know, if I have something that I feel is going to be helpful, I'll make it very clear that that's a personal thought or personal opinion. But what I truly believe is the thing that's going to help people the most is the word.
Absolutely.
And I believe it's through the word that the Holy Spirit will speak, you know, very precise things for them, things that I can't come up with on my own. So I really believe that that's the best thing I could give them. If I have an opinion that I feel like is going to be helpful, I'll offer that, but it'll be within the context of, now this is me, and here's what I see or what I would think about that. Here you go. So I try to give those if I feel like they're going to be helpful, but sometimes they're not. You know, there's a lot of opinions out there today, and not everybody needs another one to consider.
Some truth there.
And the word is the great discerner. I mean, that is going to give you discernment about right and wrong, good and evil, true and false. And so applying that, I think, cuts through all the opinions to what is true.
What do you say to people who don't believe in the word?
I want to know what you believe then.
Well, we live in a culture that, back probably I would even say 30 years, maybe even 40 years, there was some foundational element to where if you and I were having a conversation, you could say, well, hey, let's go here. Yeah. And we would have some element of, I would even just say generic or standard faith that the Bible is a historical document.
Or at least a moral framework.
Right. It holds weight.
Yes. It doesn't hold weight right now.
With some.
With many, especially in the younger generation who's not even active reading. When we look at technology, I would say it's becoming a distraction. And what do you say to people who, when you say go to the Word, and they're not interested in that?
I have two thoughts about that. The first, I would want to know what they take as a source of truth. You know, what do you give the weight of being the truth? Is there
their foundation?
Yeah. Is there a person? Is there a network? Is there some other book or system of belief that you adhere to? Or is it just whatever feels right in the moment? Okay. Second question, are you satisfied with that?
Gotcha.
And I think that's a question that people need to ask more often. Are you satisfied with the life you have right now? I mean, and this is kind of a new thing for me that I've realized in the last...
Define new.
Last 2 months, this is a revelatory thing that's really I mean, I've known this, that Jesus is fulfillment and satisfaction, life, but in talking with people, this is something that I've just really had my eyes opened up to recently. Not trying to indoctrinate in a moment and tell you this is what you need to believe to be better off.
Sure.
I first want to know if you're satisfied with what you are experiencing or not. Because if you are, I can't help. If you don't want something different, I can't give you something different.
Well, you're going back to that purpose.
Yeah.
And purpose is fulfillment. If you're living your purpose in life, you should be fulfilled. And so you're right. Without Christ, are you satisfied? Are you fulfilled? Do you feel like you're living your life with purpose?
Right. And I would say, just based on condition of people and statistics, I would say the majority of people are not satisfied or fulfilled.
Agreed.
And so I think that's I'm telling people that, are in leadership, or I get to, help them lead other people. That's something I'm going to heavy right now is, are you satisfied?
Because if you're not... I have a little story that I'd like to share that just kind of piggybacks along with this satisfaction. And I was 19 at the time, and I'd been practicing, traveling just a ton. And I was really hitting my burnout stage. I was just ready to be done. But I was actually traveling with my Aunt Tanya, and we had gone to Birmingham, Alabama. And So up to this point, I had never like shared the gospel, never shared a testimony or anything like that. I would always just perform, and then like Tanya or Dad, like someone else would do it, and I would stay in my lane, right?
Provide context though for those that don't know what you're doing. When you say perform and then let them do what it is, just
sure. We traveled to schools, churches, basketball camps, prisons, that kind of thing, and we would do performances, and we used basketball as a foundation to share the gospel. And so like I was totally on board with that, but I was never actually the one presenting the gospel or the one sharing the good news or the hope, right? So we're at a particular show, and we're actually at a Christian school, and I remember like, see how I spun all the basketballs right there? At this time, I would spin like maybe 7 or 8, and Tanya's going to spin 10. So in this particular moment, I'm helping Tanya get ready, and my Aunt Tanya, she's the one who taught my dad to spin a basketball and all this stuff. So I'm sitting there talking with her, and as I'm helping her get ready, and she goes, "Hey, Caleb, when we're done, I'd like you to share the gospel." And I got so mad. I was so mad. I said, nope, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And Tanya just said, "Caleb, you got this." And I remember in that moment, I clenched my fist and I closed my eyes because I was so frustrated. Like, of course you would do this to me. Like, that's how I felt inside. But
Tanya does this, though.
Yeah.
Puts you on the spot.
Sure. Yeah. But to not get away from the story too much, in this moment of being frustrated, I just kind of felt God speak to me in that sort of quiet whisper, and he said, "Caleb, the only way you're ever going to grow is when you allow yourself to be stretched beyond what you think you're capable." Now, for me, growing up, I didn't want to mess it up, right? That's the thing, like, because I saw Tanya do it, I saw my dad do it. They did such a fantastic job at presenting the gospel, and I never wanted to mess it up. So finally, like, I wasn't okay with it yet, but I heard that still small voice, it wasn't like an audible voice, just sort of like that's what came to me in that moment. And so I said, okay. But then, like, I was still trying to talk myself out of it. With Tanya, and I said, "Tanya, I don't even know what to say." And she goes, "Caleb, God will give you the words." So I just said, okay. Like, I'm trying to, number one, not disappoint Tanya. Number two, allow myself to be stretched beyond what I'm capable. And number three, answering the call, right? Because the Bible says that all are called. Many are called, but few are chosen. Yep. And so I want to be one of the chosen, So in this moment, I knew I had just 90 seconds to kind of figure out what the heck I was going to start. Like, wow. And I'm standing up, kind of racking my brain, like, what do I say? What do I even do? Where do I start? And I don't remember what I said, but the moment I got up there, I just started talking. I picked like 3 different ways to start, but none of them came to my mind. I got up there, and the moment I got up there, I could almost feel it like a cloak of peace just come over my head, and I just felt it all over my body. And in that moment, a peace that surpasses all understanding will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. So in this moment, I felt that peace, and I still don't remember what I said, but all of a sudden, I just felt like a download. I get something to say. Boom! This is what you're gonna say. And it's things that I'd heard Tanya say, I heard Dad say, and that day, like 20 kids gave a profession of faith, gave their life to the Lord. Now, it's not about the numbers, but all of a sudden, when I got done with that purpose kicked in. All of a sudden, it's like it clicked. Boom, boom, boom. As I was leaving, I felt as light as a feather. I had packed up, and I was walking out the door, and I was like, this is what I meant to do. Like, I had been doing it all along, but I was just so scared for that last bit, the speaking and the preaching and the talking. But when you step up into your destiny and your purpose, and you allow God to use you, even when it's not easy, you find that satisfaction, that fulfillment, that purpose. You start to live out your destiny. And so in that moment, boom, I knew I was supposed to do it. I've been so content and happy. Life's not always the greatest, but I'm always happy, always content, and life's fantastic. I've got great friends and family, and yeah. So there's my story on awesome. Purpose and satisfaction.
And by saying like Tanya does this, Tanya's very aware of like when someone needs to be pushed.
Yes.
And when she's done it enough, and she has enough friends all around the country to see when people are being like sedentary. and like, hey, we need to get this person out. And so I think in this scenario with like knowing
Tanya
Caleb's
listens
capability,
to the Lord so much.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a time I'm around Tanya where Tanya's not like saying something like, Lord help, Lord protect us, Lord be with us. She's always like, Lord protect our fingers, like as we're working and those kind of things. And I love her for it. I'm so proud of her for always bringing in that aspect of it, So as he's saying, she's aware, but I think the Lord is telling her and showing her.
It's allowing her to be used as a vessel.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Which, and she's like a legendary 4-sport athlete at SDSU in Brookings, South Dakota. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, she's onto something.
Well, and she went on to play 3 years of women's pro ball.
Wow.
In the WBL, which was a league before the WNBA.
Wow.
So, and, she played 1 year for Iowa and 2 years for San Francisco. I think they got second in the league. I think there was like 8 teams. I'm not precise, but she...
A legend.
Yes. A legend.
Yes.
Truly a legend.
And if anybody... It's so cool because her whole life is centered around like what she does, and it's so cool seeing like 35, 40, 50-year-olds that are coming back and saying how they know Tanya and how they were at basketball camps when they were
everywhere we go. She and I travel a lot.
I love it.
It's amazing. Like, oh my gosh, I see 30, 40, 50-year-olds, just like you said, coming up to her like schoolgirls. And they're just like, Tanya, you went to my school when I was in 4th grade. Now, I'm not trying to date Tanya here, but this goes back to if you keep the ball rolling. Tanya is she's such a go-getter. If you asked her this question, Tanya, what do you do to stay happy? She'd say, hey, I find if I'm not happy or if I'm having a bad day, I find out how to help somebody. So she'll come to my house and she'll be, watch Aria, or she'll go to my parents' house, and if the dishes need to be done, she'll help out. They still got 8 kids at home.
Yeah.
One of my historical figures here, which I've kind of recently rediscovered this person, and like you've read books on Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Yes, sir.
I haven't read this guy's books, but I want to. His name's Viktor Frankl. Do you know Viktor Frankl?
Oh, that's ringing a bell.
He has a quote here that goes in line with this. Frankl believed that humans are motivated by something called a will to meaning, which equates to a desire to find meaning in life. Mm-hmm. And the thing that's kind of going through my head right here is like, what's Tanya's meaning in life? What does she find happiness with? Like, as you're laying this down. And once you find that, then you have to like act in it.
Yes. You have to live it out.
Correct. And so there's something to do always. But and you tell a story in your cousin Brooke, who was on the podcast a little while ago, tells a story about how when her career path was confirmed in her, what she felt and when you shared the gospel like that and hands went up and afterwards you felt light as a feather, that feeling, that's kind of what I hope everyone experiences one way or another.
Right.
Because then that means you've got your path confirmed and your life all of a sudden just like, it doesn't get easy. Life isn't easy. But it just, when you wake up that morning with that passion, there's energy and vibrancy. You can live life
with a bounce in your step.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You can...
Mm-hmm. Correct. And that's one of my biggest missions with this whole podcast, and I'm so glad you guys are telling the stories you're telling, is because I think, ideally, we want to help people find that thing that you're passionate and purposeful on, and then let you live it out for the rest of your life in a way.
Well, and on that note, I mean, that is essentially a lot of what we do. We don't get to share the gospel everywhere we go, but we do get to share hope, and we talk about goals, purpose, attitude, excellence, those types of things that if you live your life with purpose, if you give yourself goals to help you with your purpose and you have a positive attitude, I mean, it's amazing. Attitude changes everything. You can be a star basketball player and you have a bad attitude, best you're going to get to D2 or D3. Yeah. It's amazing what your attitude will do. And your attitude can even make you better because your attitude will just keep promoting you forward. Like all this stuff, it's spinning basketballs, all that kind of thing. It is very easy to get a downtrodden attitude because it's built on failure. Every day you're failing. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to do that. But
triple digits?
Oh.
More than that?
Quadruple digits.
Like that 10,000 hours thing?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's real.
It's real.
It's real.
Yeah.
10,000 hours per level.
Yeah.
Like to spin a basketball is, I would say, maybe 100, 200 hours. It's just if you just spend that time. But that's just building block number 1.
Sure.
Yep. Then you got to learn to spin it on your right hand, which, let's
start
knock
over.
It back down to level 1, and you got to learn there. Now you got to learn to spin it both ways with both hands. So so already we're 1,000 hours in, and you're just spinning the basketball. Now you're learning to go like around, and you're getting comfortable with the basketball, learning to spin it on another person's finger. That takes time because you're learning how to manipulate the sphere, which is now, it's no longer a sphere, but it's a sphere acting as a gyro. And that's what keeps a motorcycle up. So as you're driving down the road, it's a gyro, but now the gyro is not this way, it's this way. So when you're learning to manipulate that, the whole dynamic changes. So like if you're balancing a basketball and it falls this way, you come this way. Falls that way, you go this way. But with a gyro, it's the exact opposite. When it falls that way, you want to pull away from it. And that's the part that nobody can get. And that's where it's just practice. All of a sudden, it's like,
it has to be like a reflex.
Yes, it's just a reflex.
Muscle memory.
Not to get into the science of it, but as it rolls, because it's always, you're noticing where it's going. Such as it's rotating around, you're actually preemptively knowing that it's going to come back around. So if you go the opposite way, you're actually catching it where it's going to be, not where it's at.
Cool.
The science of spin.
And I've actually, I'm working on slowly starting a YouTube channel, but one of the things I really want to dive into is the science behind a spinning basketball and why it operates the way it does. Because if I have a basketball spinning in this direction, I can spin around in circles this way all day long, and that ball will just fall in and work. But if I go the other way, it doesn't work. And there's a science behind it that I'm wondering why.
It's cool.
It's very cool.
Little
cool.
Tangent on
basketballs,
which nobody cares about.
Right, hey. It's interesting.
And it's hard to do without actually showing you, so I hope people kind of understand what I'm saying, but yeah.
So who is Viktor Frankl? Is it Frankl?
Yes, Viktor Frankl.
So who is he, though, not just what he said?
The Google machine here.
Sure.
I'll give you an accurate description. An Austrian neurologist, psychiatrist, philosopher, author, and Holocaust survivor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What year?
He lived until 1997, born 1905.
Wow. Probably because of an author that I've heard of him.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to know.
Several books. Yep, several books. And a lot of it is that Holocaust survivor and how you lived. I think he has theories that are widely accepted as to what allowed some person to live and some person to die during the Holocaust.
The Holocaust, like people who would...
The long haulers, who were there for years and years and years, the thing that they hung on to while they were, POW soldiers or just like a Jew being persecuted.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
Wow.
So
as World War II
have you
fans,
ever traveled?
we should look that up.
Never out of the Midwest.
Yeah, so when we went to Poland, we went to Brookings and Elkton, which I've been there twice. I mean, you can't even smile in that place, but it's just incredible to go there.
Auschwitz, the worst
Auschwitz
or the most...
And Brookings, yep.
The death camp.
Yes. Yeah.
Where they took him to die.
Yep.
Okay.
And so we got to see just the whole atmosphere, and there it is. There's bricks from the moratorium that they knocked down. Is that what they call them? Yeah. Where they burn all the bodies, and you see the rubble, and then you've got some of the huts are still up, and then you've got the stoves and all that stuff, and it's just incredible to know that in the 19th century or in the 20th century, whichever one or what, that we were doing that to humans. I mean, that was 70 years ago now?
Yeah, close a little
1943, I believe.
43 to 40. The World War II ended in 1945. So
yeah, so it was 1943, I believe, to the end of 1945.
Yeah,
wow.
75 years. And
scary.
If you ever get an opportunity, go.
Yeah.
It's a very sobering experience, but definitely one that helps you appreciate life.
Sure.
There's a room you walk in, and it's just filled with human hair. It's just filled. And then there's another one where they have glasses, suitcases, just all the parts, and there's baby dolls, and it's just this stuff that they found there. And they would actually take these things and they would actually use them. The human hair, they would actually find a way, after they cut it off, they'd find a way to use it for who knows what, clothes or different things. But you just see the massive amount that's there. And it's a small fraction of what they actually got.
That's the point, a fraction.
Oh, my.
So all that being said, here's another quote from Viktor Frankl, is that, as thinking from the Holocaust survivor standpoint, everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way, which, no one can, in a concentration camp setting, I mean, your attitude is maybe the one thing that you can control. As bad as
I
things
don't know
get.
how you could have a positive
Right.
attitude
Yeah.
about that.
Wow.
Correct. So just the mental strength. I mean, when you talk about athletes and you guys, thousands of hours spinning basketballs and now owning or on your way to owning a world record. I mean, the mental toughness that's involved with that.
Yeah, but to me, that pales in comparison to the mental toughness these guys needed to survive that.
Right. Here's a guy teaching it, lived through it. I mean, if there's anyone that we should listen to in today's day and age, it'd be a guy like this.
Can you get him on the podcast?
I wish. Yeah. But there we go.
Wow.
Another guy I admire is James J Braddock, which
Oh my.
James Braddock.
Cinderella Man. Love movies.
I've seen that one.
Cinderella Man. Yeah.
That is actually one of the more historical accurate films, I would say.
Yeah.
Went through and actually looked up a lot of his old fights, and he is, just an amazing, not only boxer, right, for being an older gentleman and winning, but also human being too.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right on. All the way down to him returning his welfare money, just because he was convicted. Something that no one asked you to do.
No.
But he did. And it was a lot of money, too.
Right.
Back in then. I mean, it was, not a small amount.
No.
Where I'm like watching the movie and like, seriously, you gave that back? And it just shows where my heart's at. It's like, but.
Conviction.
Right. At least give it to somebody on, down the street who's hurting.
Yeah.
But, he gave it to the office who will recirculate it to somebody else. So that's basically what he was doing. He was just giving the authority to choose to someone else.
Right.
Of that, where that money went. But
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'd have made that same decision.
in times of crisis, you will be forced to decide tough decisions, and
Character shows.
character shows through. And I think that's something we should all prepare for, because when things are cushy, you ain't got to worry about a lot of that, but you got to know what you're going to do in these tough decisions. Which,
Yeah. I just think too about, like, we talk about call or like purpose for life. And I think so many of the people that we end up respecting, looking to over time, are people who purpose their lives for others. I can't think of anybody in the last 100 years that we still talk about who lived just to make their life better.
I want you to think of something. I want you to
Yeah.
pick two people in your head. So, Phil, you do this, and Isaiah, you do this too. I'm not going to ask you names, but think of the happiest person you know. You got them in your head?
No.
not quite.
That's a hard one.
That is
Okay,
hard.
but just think of the person that you think is so happy.
I've got a person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now think of the least happy person you know. Okay. Now when you get that, look at how they handle their finances. Are they giving? Are they kind? Are they charitable? It's amazing how the handling of finances can be directly tied to your happiness. I'm not saying that finances are everything, but when you are giving of your time, your talents, and your abilities and your finances, when you give those away, it releases something in you, a happiness. For me, happy person I know is my Aunt Tanya. And how does she handle that? Oh my gosh, she'll give you the shirt off her back. And then I think of someone I know who's not happy, and how do they handle finances? They're very tight with it. They're penny pinching. And when you live your life like that, it's amazing to see the difference.
Yeah. I agree.
Just talking the other week about how money is just a representation of your life. I mean, if you think about what you give to make money,
Yep.
it is your time, your talent, your effort, your energy, blood, sweat, and tears. And then what you spend that on is, really you're representatively spending your life for
Absolutely.
things. I told a story at church a couple weeks ago about when I was a senior in high school, I really wanted to get this other car. I wanted a sports car. And I added up how many hours of my life I would have to work in order to buy that car based on how much money I was making an hour. And that's how I looked at it, was I'm going to have to give this much of my life to get this. Is that worth it? And I said, yes, it was. And
Did you get it?
Oh, I got it.
What was the car?
It was a Mazda RX-8.
Okay.
It was yellow with black wheels.
Do
It was a real slidey one.
you regret that decision now?
I don't.
Or
think
would you have gotten something else?
Like for the time and like who I was then.
It totally fit you.
I wouldn't get that car today, but it fit what I was after in the moment.
How long did you keep it for?
Like 2.5 years,
Okay.
and then I sold it for more money than I bought it for.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've had a couple vehicles go that way, which is a blessing.
It's hard to get more out of a vehicle than you put into it.
Yeah, depreciation's for real.
Hopefully the person that bought that car isn't listening to this podcast.
That's incredibly that's a great way to look at it. I think that I've never done that. I've never looked at my hourly rate, that sort of thing, and said, I want to buy a gun. We can pick that if you want, but never thought about, I'm going to have to work X amount of hours to have this. Is it worth it?
Yeah.
Sounds like a Dave Ramsey habit.
I don't know if I got that from him, but
we can just call it an Isaac habit.
Well, I'd be
so I'm going to start asking you how much that cost you. I just want to hear hourly.
All right, hourly rate, wage for your shirt.
It was a gift.
Oh, shoot.
Free.
I tell people all the time, most of my clothes were gifts. I have people that dress me really well. My fiance and mother and grandmother.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Aren't you glad for them?
Yes.
Yeah, good habits. This last couple minutes here for us until we wrap. I just want to rapid fire, quick answers, more or less. Like, for example, number one thing you do to build and protect your health on a regular basis is what?
Sauna. Yes, absolutely. Studies and statistics out there show that if you do sauna one to two times a day, one to two times a week.
Sure.
You lower your risk of dying of anything by like 20%.
Yeah, like straight up mortality risk is what they measure.
Yes. Yeah. And then if you do it 1 to 5, it's like 40%. And so obviously you're going to die someday. But when you start looking at other risk factors, cardiovascular health and those other things, you start adding all those things up, it's really helpful. And it's also fun. I enjoy doing sauna. I love doing it with you and I haven't done it with you yet. But
probably would be great.
Yeah.
With sauna, though, the other aspect of health that can come from that is the socialization that comes from technology being separate. And so a lot of the enjoyment that can come from a sauna session is actually who you're doing it with.
Yes.
I don't like meditation can happen. Like a lot of people like to do sauna by themselves. I think it's a great one because it separates yourself from some version of technology. Sometimes you can be reading a book, bettering yourself that way. You can be socializing where everybody's present and accounted for. And at the same time, it's almost like you're working. So you're struggling through
sitting there going, if I just have to get up out of here to be over with this.
So I think there's many different factors that play into like the health aspect.
But when you talk about daily, that's a daily thing. Obviously food.
Diet,
what's your intake?
Nutrition. Yep.
One thing I could say is if you shouldn't eat it, don't bring it into the house. Don't bring junk food into the house because when you're at your weak moments and that's what you're going to go to. You're going to go to that easy food that's quick and that's good. So don't bring it in. And that's where it's a blessing to have a wife who helps me eat better. Yep. So what does she do?
Same.
What does your wife do? They make sure the food that comes in is good. So then that's all there is to eat. Yep. So you never have to worry about,
Mine is get adjusted.
Yep.
I do that too, as much as possible.
He's just biased because he always gets adjusted from me. So when you always have it, right? It's not at top of mind. So thanks, Caleb. Appreciate the shout out, brother.
And hey, whenever I'm down here, I always stop into the office as much as possible.
For sure.
Get adjusted and like I think he's mentioning like the things that are top of mind, right? And I think that he would probably like a more well-rounded answer would be 5 answers to that. So he would say sauna. He would say nutrition. He does not want to leave exercise out. He does not want to leave adjusting out. And he does not want to leave healthy mindset out. Like all of those aspects, you can't. He's just focusing on the things that are probably not common topic. Everyone knows exercising is good for you. Everyone knows like some version of eating well, but he's also challenging people on the nutrition side. So to say it's up to one thing, I think would be a misrepresentation of saying what's the one thing for health. And it's like, well, it's a lot of things.
Yeah.
True. Love it. It's awesome. What's one tip to have better relationships?
Communicate. Absolute communication. And I'm still working on this even in my marriage and even in our relationships. Sometimes when you're out of sync, it's just because someone's not communicating. And communication is so key. This is sort of the thing where like I see the speck in somebody else's eye, but I have a peg in my own eye, and the peg in my own eye is I fail to communicate. And that's probably one of the things that my wife Destiny is like, Caleb, you just need to communicate with me. I'm like, I'm trying so hard. But if you can communicate, everything else will fall into place.
Right on.
Humility. Yep.
So humble communication.
Yep.
Just thinking of yourself less.
Yeah, I just think a lot of us have, and I'll speak to myself, I have a lot of tendencies to think of myself more highly, right? And so if I get in a conflict, a lot of times it's when I'm wrong, right? And my first response on an element of pride is to, no, you're wrong. And you start to like try to make yourself bigger, right? And then the voices get raised. And then it becomes a battle of who's right and who's wrong. And if you always come at it with an aspect of humility, and this is just, it's an ongoing battle. If you come at it with an aspect of humility, you will have better communication because then your pride's not getting in the way. You're not getting offended by the small things because you're like, maybe I am wrong, right? And I think that, for me, it's just trying to keep my pride in check, especially when it's communicating with someone like your wife or your spouse or your brother or sister. If you're always trying to come at it with humility, I think it will go incredibly better for you because you're leaving an element that they could be right? I could be wrong.
Can I add one thing to this?
Sure.
Try not to be offended. We live in a very offensive world. And by that, I mean, it's so easy to get offended by, oh gosh, that guy blew by me on the car too fast. We live in a world that's so easy to be offended by because we don't have a lot of problems. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the things that we struggle with today is everyone's like, well, I want to be offended by something. So try not to be offended and live your life in a way that's not offensive.
Yeah,
right on.
And with that, I don't know if I can add anything with that. Because I feel like sometimes you actually, sometimes it's easy to say that, but then a lot of times the person who says like, oh, don't get offended, a lot of times we're the ones who offend people, right? And so
that's why I said don't be offensive.
What's that?
I said don't be offended and don't be offensive.
Oh, okay, I missed that. So yeah, what he said.
How about one thing to maintain contentment and or avoid burnout from the daily monotonous repetition of life?
I'll let you take the lead on this one.
Repeat the question.
One method to avoid burnout from the repetition of life, but then keep your energy high, maintain contentment in life.
Wow. It goes, Tanya, she's an element of, she always serves. And I found that when I started my practice in Brookings, South Dakota, I was spending so much time inside the practice, but I had already had a child in school. And so Finley was, born in 2016. We started in 2017, so she's just under a year. And the aspect of coming home to a child and to a wife that you may have had a rough day, but somebody else doesn't. It was like I would come home and I would focus on like, oh, me. I've got this to do and this to do. And stress would build up. And I would be ill-content with what I got done that day. And then you have like this child that does not care about your day. And it's like, wow, thank you for being like, there's a need there. I want to be held. I'm tired. I need to go to bed. And it allowed me to take the focus off like myself, not intentionally. Like I did not want to do that, but it forced me to like, this child needs love. And it allowed me to have that element of like serving my child because of what they needed. And that like, people who do some endeavor and are like single or they're by themselves, more power to them. Wow. When I could come home and I was forced to unplug, I was forced to separate myself. That was the best thing healthily for me, was to take my focus off of that. And so if someone is like, if I was single, that's why I got involved in so many activities in school. I don't like to be just ill-content. I always busied myself with something. So that's what I would say is start serving somebody even when you don't want to, like a screaming child who doesn't like to sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's talking about his daughter and, me. I've seen my daughter's almost 2 now. In June, she'll be 2. And it's just amazing. Every time I come home, she's just like, Daddy. And she wants to spend all her time with me. And so now I've got to learn to like, make sure when I'm working that there's no screws out and stuff. And like I'm constantly like vacuuming up my mess so that she doesn't get dirty in my mess. Like I'm sheetrocking my house right now. Sheetrock dust everywhere, and she's over there picking up handfuls of it, and getting all over her, which means it's inside. So I'm constantly cleaning up after her. But yes, it takes a little more time, but she's so happy and she's so content. And you start to see her joy, and her joy brings me joy. And so It is just amazing. She's like my new little best friend. Last night,
Yeah.
Philip and I were actually doing sauna here, and like she wants in, she's knocking on the door. So she comes in, and we obviously put her down on the ground where it's not as hot, and she just hangs out, drinks a bunch of my water, and then 2 minutes later gets out. It's too cold, gets back in. So I think the door probably opened 10 times.
This is a
But
lot.
it's fun.
It's like your electricity bill goes up.
Yeah.
Funny. It's a good time. It wasn't because I was there. She was, daddy's little girl
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
for sure. Right on. Anything?
I just want to clarify, like she was only in there for like a minute or two at a time on the floor where it's not hot.
There was no risk.
There was no risk
Yeah.
of adverse effects for kids who shouldn't be doing sauna. I completely agree with that.
I just think with both of those, it goes back to that. It's more blessed to give than to receive,
Yes.
like we were talking about a bit ago. You know, you're given to your child,
And you mentioned that.
daughter.
That's what Isaac's good at.
Yeah.
Taking what people monologue
Sum it up.
in. More blessed to give than
Yep.
receive.
This is why I love this man to my right is right here, because I will be trying to say something, and he will say it simpler and better and more suavely than I will.
Yes.
Praise the Lord. Thank you for that.
We're all just friends here.
Yeah, we're all just friends. Yes.
I like that you sum it up like that because it's often hard to take the experience of that. And it is, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
This is good. Guys, we could go for hours more, but we're going to outro and just wrap it up
Thank you.
here.
It's an absolute privilege to be
Yeah.
on here with you, Philip and Isaiah. And
Thanks,
great
Philip.
to meet a new
Hey,
friend.
it was so good to meet you guys.
Yes.
Pleasure to meet you.
Loved the conversation.
If you ever want to get rid
Absolutely.
of that shirt, I'll probably take it.
Is that right?
Yeah, it looks nice.
It is nice.
And it's warm.
Hey,
Almost too warm.
it is more blessed to give than to receive.
Oh, yeah.
Say that'll cost you 1 hour of a work day.
There you go.
Throwback. All right.
Throwback.
All right, this is
No.
Unfiltered.
He's Isaiah. He's
I'm Caleb.
He's Philip.
He's Isaac. Boom. That's a wrap. Hasta la vista, baby.
Have a great day.